Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be looking at Superman Unlimited issue 12, written by Dan Slott with art by Lucas Meyer, colors by Giuliano Peritelli, and letters by Dave Sharp. El Caldero takes a step to ensure its future this issue as President Castillo holds a grand parade, still putting on the act that they are allies of Superman, thanking Kal-El for his sacrifice in the Omega tournament, but he will one day return, and until then, they'll keep his spirit alive. Vicky Vale asks Castillo if he's worried about Superman's disappearance affecting the export of kryptonite from El Caldero, but Castillo knows kryptonite is no longer their greatest resource, as thanks to the Sunstone giving them access to a Kryptonian fortress, they have many things that are worth much more now. Slott coming back to his kryptonite storyline every few issues has really been great. The story never feels like it's being overdone or oversaturated. We get ramifications of this story here and there throughout the other books in the DCU, but they are keeping it rather contained to this so far. It's mainly just Superman having to deal with all of this kryptonite in the world, and I like that now that he's gone, it's his family who are dealing with it. Getting to see what Castillo is doing with the Sunstone Fortress is something I've been waiting for a good number of issues, since it's never a good idea when a villain gets Kryptonian tech, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Slott will work that angle into Reign of the Superboys. I'm sure they get sent after the Super Sun or something like that. It's definitely going to bring them into blows with El Caldero again. Castillo has Bruno, his right-hand man, call forth the Crypto Knights, unveiling his new soldiers, who are all decked out in Kryptonian armor and war suits. More Kryptonian-based villains is always a win for me. I love the design aesthetic going on with the purple war suits that make them look like a team of villains that John will have to face. That's really cool idea. We got the original villain last issue with Master Tiz, and now we're getting a team of villains, all who have color-coordinated costumes. Castillo says that kryptonite has many more applications outside of weaponry, like being used as fuel for rockets, and who knows what else someone might come up with one day. Castillo is right more than he would care to admit, as in a lab in Metropolis, a group of chimps are injected with kryptonite, with one breaking containment and escaping the lab and out into the city, which the scientists note has 10 more hours until sunrise, and 10 hours until the chimp is exposed to yellow sun radiation and will gain Superman's superpowers. Superpowered chimps sound like a bit of a classic Superman dilemma to put into the book alongside, the Young John storyline and the El Caldero bits. Gives it a nice balance between new stuff and more traditional superhero stuff. Back in Smallville, Tomorrow Man tries to calm down the young John Kent, explaining that he is a friend of his. The people in the town spot the young hero and crowd around him, trying to get him to explain what happened to him, since to just normal everyday people, he just seemed to disappear one day. John becomes overwhelmed, screaming for everyone to go away, creating a sonic blast that blows all of the people into the air. John didn't mean to do that, but it's too late as Tomorrow Man races to save the falling people, trying to explain to them that the young hero just isn't himself and he's kind of overwhelmed. Okay, so I'm really liking the older John isn't immediately revealing who he is thanks to how time travel works. I'm sure if he did reveal his identity to John, the younger John, it would cause all sorts of problems with the timeline, probably destroy reality or something like that. It also gives a chance for Tomorrow Man to make a debut and tell people who he is and that he's a new hero there to help out, and he's sticking around. The younger John is sorry that he almost hurt those people, wanting to leave, but again, he's not paying attention as he flies out of Smallville and right into Smallville's water tower, forcing a Tomorrow Man to go and brace it before it tips over. Tomorrow Man has to snap John out of his shock as he needs his help with the water tower, as the water has overbalanced it and it begins to spill out of the top. The water which could flood all of Main Street. John thinks that he's just going to screw up again like he did before, but Tomorrow Man believes in him since he is Superboy and can do anything. John blasts the water with his freeze breath, turning it into a chunk of ice as he carries it to the ground. He asks the obvious question, how does Tomorrow Man keep knowing that he can do all of this and knew he could help him? Tomorrow Man can't obviously tell John he is him, but from the future, so he'll only say that he knows what John needs, wanting to take the boy back to Metropolis. The dynamic Slott has for John and Tomorrow Man is exactly what I wanted, since it's older John using his own device development to teach the younger version of himself, the younger, inexperienced John, what to do, giving young John some actual character development, something he never actually got. Despite what I'm sure everyone in the comment section is going to try and tell me, he didn't get anything in those Super Son books. It was nothing. I read every volume of the Super Sons, including when it became a digital-only book, and there were barely any defining moments for him, and Slott looks to be trying to give him those defining moments and give him that development that he is sorely lacking. Over in Hobbs Bay, Bibbo Babowski closes up his new food truck, the Ace of Clubs, Subs, and Pierogies, when he is confronted by the escaped kryptonite monkey, which he finds eating the garbage. But instead of fighting the monkey or shooing it away, Bibbo cracks a soda and decides to share a drink with it, because of course he would. It's Bibbo fucking Babowski. He's everybody's best friend, which now includes super monkeys. Bibbo mistakes the monkey's ID tag for his name, Beppo, which is what the monkey says via the talking device around its neck. Bibbo again doesn't really understand and thinks the monkey is trying to say his name, so he keeps trying to correct it, getting into an argument with the monkey. This being the reintroduction to Beppo, who's been out of comics for a very long time. It was something I didn't see coming. I didn't think this was going to be Beppo. I figured, Kryptonite monkey, you get something a la Titano or something like that Superman's going to inevitably have to fight. But I kind of like that it's Beppo, and they're probably going to be friends with Bibbo in the back pages of this book. And again, if this leads to more Bibbo in this book, I am all for that. He's such an underrated character. As Bibbo argues with the monkey, Batman and Robin stop by to see Lois, knowing Clark would want it to happen. Bruce also admits it's also because Damian misses Krypto, who is staying with Lois now. He tells her that he's tried everything in and out of his power to locate Clark, but he can't find any trace of him. But he has faith that Superman will come back. Batman gets ready to go, but Lois tells him that she hasn't heard anything from John in a while and he should be in Metropolis filling in for his father, not Superboy Prime, since that's his legacy, not Prime's. Williamson's stories with Prime spilling over into this is great. It is kind of like that kind of unanswered questions, like, well, why isn't John just taking over? Well, he's kind of dealing with his own stuff that Slott has in store for it. So I like that they're shoring that up as well, and kind of telling readers like, hey, you should be reading both these books because they're both kind of important. Suddenly, Tomorrow Man arrives with John, reuniting Lois with her son as he promises that this isn't some trick and it's all thanks to time travel. Krypto thinks that something is wrong, which is something I would really like to highlight here. Krypto growls and barks at the young John, which is a huge red flag since he would know the boy. He would not do that. Makes me believe that this isn't actually the young John that everyone wants. Remember, this is all done by a fourth dimensional demon. Probably some trick to get back at his arch nemesis Tomorrow Man, or, some sick prank, or, there is, because he's a demon, there's a catch. Just like, yeah, young John is back, but he's now evil or something. There's that con to the pro. I would be all for that idea. There's something really compelling there for older John to reckon with, that in doing all of this of what he's done, he's kind of doomed his younger self and in turn himself. There's something really interesting there if Slott decides to go that way. However, I know whatever way he goes, people are just going to bitch and moan about it. As John reunites with his mother, Batman immediately questions Tomorrow Man, who keeps up the act with Batman, saying that he has to be very careful what he tells them, otherwise John's timeline could be put at stake. Batman can tell his costume is made from materials not yet invented, and his chronal signature is off from everyone else's, so his story holds true so far, and Tomorrow Man tells him that he brought John home for a second chance. Lois asks Batman and Robin to leave so she can spend time with her son, and before they leave, Robin and even Krypto know that something is just not right about this younger John. As Batman and Robin leave, Tomorrow Man catches himself in the mirror, realizing his father wanted him to take over from him should he die or disappear or isn't able to do Superman work anymore. But he also told him that his greatest regret was that he and Lois never got to raise him. He thinks about how young John can stay and maybe he should leave for the timeline, but Lois and John want him to stay, since as Lois puts it, John seems to trust him and see him as a friend. She can't do all of this by herself, and Tomorrow Man might be there to help her when she needs it. Tomorrow Man agrees to stick around as in the auxiliary Batcave, Robin prepares some kryptonite batarangs since he knows there is something wrong with this supposed Superboy. So I'm just going to say it, I hope this story leads to the younger Superboy going back into the timeline, being, put back into the toy box as it were. Kinda has to make the time travel thing make sense. The Superman family at the moment also is very, very overcrowded with so many people filling in the same role as each other. There just isn't any variety and, some characters just get completely forgotten about or are sequestered by certain writers and thus can't appear in other things, a la the Star Child and the Red Sun. They can't really appear in any of this because they're off with Philip Kennedy Johnson stuff, and then you've got like Kenan Kong, and then Power Girl, and then Supergirl and Superboy, so it's just becoming a bit too overcrowded, and all of those characters have the same powers and, jobs, so there's no variety, especially when you compare it to something like the Bat family, where each member there caters to different fans, has different ways about doing things and everything, but it never feels the same way with the Superman family because all of their powers are so similar. It's also why I'm really liking Slott is breaking John away from that and giving him his own personality in that of Tomorrow Man and making him his own hero separate away from the rest of the family. Having a younger John there is just super reductive. As I said, it just kind of overcrowds everything. And I know that people will bitch at me for that, but it's the truth. John has had more growth and variety as an adult than he ever got as a child. Where, as I've said before, all he would do was fight kid versions of Superman's villains or go on an adventure with Damian where there was no character development at all from both of them. It wasn't until they got out of the Super Son duo is that, Damian got all of this great character development with Joshua Williamson, and then John also got it through Joshua Williamson as well, Tom Taylor, Philip Kennedy Johnson, and now Dan Slott. They've given the character so much more light and variety, and that's what a character needs to be. It can't just be the one thing all the time. Superman Unlimited issue 12 gave a certain group of fans what they wanted, but since Dan Slott is an actual writer, he has something interesting to say with the return of the Super Son. But what I've really been liking is what he's been doing with the older John, giving him his own identity in that of the Tomorrow Man and making him his own person. I'm looking forward to the Kryptonites 2 and the return of President Castillo. That's a cool threat for John to deal with in his father's absence, and I'm really looking forward to that Kryptonite Nation story becoming the A-plot again. I'm going to give this issue an 8 out of 10.